I think it's time that we, as a group of Montanans, say, wait a minute, let's start putting our ears to the ground and listening to the people out there who are voting and saying, we want some property tax reform, it's killing us, we want to be able to survive here, so let's get some jobs. I voted with Mike Jopek from Whitefish on the reappraisal bill. I've gone against my party on several votes. I think that when you get down there, you vote your conscience with the people who you are representing, and if you don't, you're doing them a disservice.
I think one particular issue that will come up again this legislative session will be the privatization of the Veterans Home. And when it comes to the quality care of veterans, I don't think either party can claim to have the market cornered on that. All I know is that when you have men and women who have fought for this country, the care and quality of care and their way of life needs to be a priority.
I'm glad to participate in the Republican conventions for the last 4, 5, 6, 8 years, and been involved in the platform committee for the platform of the Republican Party. And overall, I think it's a pretty good platform, or it's probably a real good platform, and most of the things in it I intend to follow. But I do have a tendency to vote against the crowd once in a while, and quite a bit. And once in a while I win too. There was a bill last session to make it so that new ranches would not be allowed to serve food to people that weren't residents there, weren't guests there. And it went through the Senate committee, whatever committee it went through, the standing committee before it went to the Senate floor, and it went past there 100%. It passed out to the Senate floor 100%. I went up, came over to the House, and went through the House committee, passed there 100%. And I got up and spoke against it on the House floor. And to die after I spoke against it by 80 to 20, real big time. Set kind of a record on that one. Well, I am a little bit obstinate when I see something that's wrong. I mean, we're in House District 3, we're trying to expand the shoulder seasons for our dude ranches and for our other recreational providers or other tourist industry. And to say that, hey, we're going to cut back what a dude ranch can, whether they can serve a hamburger to somebody that stops by there on a snowmobile trip or something like that, is actually going the wrong way when we're trying to increase the prosperity of our area rather than decrease it.
Thanks, Jerry. I'm going to cut you
So
short.
anyhow, that's my short answer. I got some more.
That's your long, short answer, Jerry. Okay, next up, John.
All right.
Well, I can think of one time in particular, back in 2002, as a conservative, I went down to Helena and sat there in front of the Law and Justice Subcommittee to explain to them that we needed a centralized judiciary system concerning the indigent in our state. The statewide public defenders program is what I'm referring to. And Jerry came in, sat down, listened to the arguments back and forth, and even he agreed that even though it's not necessarily a conservative proposition, this centralized program was necessary. And I think it's helped a lot of Montanans in the process.
Thanks.
Well, hopefully this isn't the kiss of death, but I'm going to say it because this is what I've been hearing on the doors, and that is there's a lot of folks in Whitefish who would be willing to entertain a sales tax. I hear it a lot. I think it would make sense if it's structured properly. I think people are using the Whitefish model as a successful model. It's provided a ton of benefits to the community as far as road improvement and property tax relief. It doesn't have to be regressive. It depends on how it's structured. So I would look at sales tax, and depending on how it's structured, and that's something that the Democratic Party hasn't been particularly supportive of.
I haven't been either.
A lot of people are not in favor of it. The Interlake has supported sales taxes for years, but it hasn't come up for years either because people are afraid to bring it up. Okay, Tim?
Well, first of all, I want to kind of qualify the question, Frank, because within the question, I objected in my mind when I was reading it to the idea of a personal conscience really coming into play when it comes to making state decisions. I don't want to sound like I don't have a conscience, because I do, but I believe political decisions are made based upon our rule of law and our system of law. That is the fundamental law of our Constitution. And that's the focus of a lawmaker's decision-making process, is what is constitutional, and from there, what is a sound policy for the state of Montana. And one particular area I'm pretty concerned about, because I hear it discussed quite a bit, and that is the area of tort reform. It may sound self-serving because I'm an attorney, but I can assure you that this is not a personal issue with me. I believe the crux of the matter is we have to ensure that the judiciary system is available for individuals to seek redress for injuries that have been caused to them by parties who are negligent. That is a fundamental concept that started in Europe and translated into American system. I believe that if we were to just use the efficiency more than justice, that would be an incorrect balance in our system. And so while I believe that we should promote the economy, we should want a healthy economy, I'm all for that. I also believe that individual justice is a foundational concept in our society we cannot remove or we cannot take lightly. So I don't want to assume too much as to what a tort reform bill may be proposed in the next session, but if I felt that it violated our constitutional right of access to justice, then I might be opposed to that, which might go against what the Republican Party would be supportive of.
Thank you.
That too might be a kiss of death.
Diane?
Hi. On the cards that I pass out at the door, it says that I'm not taking any PAC money or PAC endorsements or endorsements from any organizations, because I want to go to Helena and be able to look at every issue based on the facts and make the best judgment that I can on those facts. And I've already told people at the doors that sometimes I'm going to have to vote against what in my heart I would really like to do, but that just goes with the territory. Listening to the people that have spoken before me, I went through today trying to get ready for tonight, list of things that I was interested in, and sales tax was one of them, only I called it a tourist tax, because I looked at the book Pathways to Prosperity and some other information from the Tourist Bureau that we went to the other day. And there are a lot of people visiting our state, and they are spending an incredible amount of money, and they are paying nothing, and they're ready to pay it. They pay it their home states. They're not going to stay away because we have a tourist tax. So as Ed said, if it was structured correctly, and I think it could be, I think that when you file a state income tax, you could get credit back for what you paid in on sales tax. I agree about tort reform. In some of the meetings that I've gone to, I've heard my honorable Republican opponents say that they want tort reform, but at the same time they say for the businesses they want no regulation. They want everybody out of the way. They want to do what they want. And I think that seems kind of contradictory, that businesses can do anything they want, but then there's going to be limits on people being able to sue for redress when they've been injured. And I'm not sure I agree with Steve Lavin on who gets to decide if it's a frivolous lawsuit? I think that's up to the courts, it shouldn't be decided ahead of time. And on a really personal basis, quickly, I'm a vegetarian, but I live in a house with a full gun safe and an elk rack, and I know I'm going to have to vote to let people hunt, so.
You know, just thinking back, if you haven't been to Helena into the Capitol and watched how that all works in the House, there's a board up there that has a bunch of lights that light up next to your name on how you voted, whether you voted yes or no. And I remember looking up there one time and realizing that not only was I the only Republican that voted no on a bill, I was the only representative that voted no on the bill. And the reason that I did is because I have a decision-making process that I keep on my desk that keeps me focused on what my heart says, not on what a PAC says, not on what leadership in the House says, not on caucus leadership, but on my heart. I read every bill and make sure that I make a decision based on that decision-making process. And the postcards that I send out actually have what I have written on the desk on the back of that postcard, so you understand that that's how I do it. And you heard earlier about the Veterans Home. The Flathead legislators stood up, and I'm not sure that each one of them testified, but pretty close to all of them did, and we were able to block the closing of, or the restructuring of the Veterans Home, because we were, the House was trying to make a decision based on a one-paragraph set of facts that we were given, and we were able to block that. As I sit on the audit committee, we've now, we have a full audit of the Veterans Home, both here and in Glendive, so that we have some better facts now to make decisions on. Thank you.
Thank you. Brittany?
I can say with complete confidence that I will vote every issue constitutionally informed and by my conscience. It's not really a secret to people within my party and both parties, people on the door, that I wanted to run as an independent, and I am an independent at heart. I really don't believe in the party system. I think that we could well evolve past that, and I think we'll be headed in that direction, and I hope soon. We are all need to sit down at the table together and talk about solving issues in smart and effective ways. And anything that distracts from that, and the millions of dollars spent in battle could be spent on the issues, and it could be time spent working together. So I firmly hold true to that.
Thank you. And Steve?
One of the things I really loved about serving in Helena was that I was a little afraid when I got there that, you know, it'd be all party politics all the time. Well, that's not the case. There's a lot of times you vote independently. You vote for the people in your area. You represent the people. And I did that dozens of times, literally hundreds of votes. And you vote what you told people on the doors and what you feel. And then if you have some input, I had a lot of great input from constituents. And it was great. Randy mentioned the Vets Home. We all voted to protect that. The tourism, there was some voting on that to limit some of the money going into the tourism. We protected that because we realized that up here in the Flathead, that's part of our economy. I'm proud of my votes. They're public. They're online. I'm a real independent voter. I don't always toe the party line, but I am a Republican as well. And that's how I feel. Thank you.
Thanks. I know there's some people who want to respond to some of those things, but I'm going to ask them to forego that. Maybe they can get in something later when they're addressing another topic. But I want to now ask the audience. I can't turn the floor over to the audience because we have limited time, and I want to keep the focus on the candidates, but I want to see if there's hands raised for topics that they want addressed in particular, and maybe a very, very short question on that topic. If not, I've got questions and prepared, but I just want to see if there's anybody with a burning desire to bring one particular topic to the floor. Okay.
Yes, Ed, why would you want a sales tax in this state where we've got all these people out of work? We've got gas going up instead of down, and we've got groceries going up instead of down. We've got all these people that are homeless. They reported how many people are homeless from the Samaritan House the other day. If you listen to the TV, I think it was 3,000 and some people were looking for a place to live.
Okay, I'm going to take the floor back. That was what I didn't want to have happen. I agree that sales tax is an important issue, and I'll go ahead and let people talk on taxation. I've got a question related to taxation as well, and we'll let the candidates talk on this important issue. My question was if the cost of government and its responsibilities in the form of education, entitlements, and corrections continues to rise dramatically, then how can property taxes be lowered? Do we need to change the tax system so it doesn't weigh so heavily on property owners? And we can, each candidate can address property taxes and sales tax and what combination of taxation they think is fair. And I'm going to just open this one up again to the audience, to the candidates. And I've called on Ed a couple of times, so I don't want to call on him first, but I'm sure he'll want to respond to that, and he'll get his chance. Is there anybody else who'd like to go first? Okay, Dave. Called for Dave a couple of times too, but he's close.
I know, I get you. So, sorry. In respect to the property tax or the sales tax issue, I think we're sort of getting mixed up two systems. One is what I consider to be a very popular, voted in, successful local option tax, you may call it, in Whitefish, which is designated as a tourist town. The second is a general sales tax. It's interesting to note that in 72 or 71, when the new Constitution was written, it's already been written in that 4% would be the maximum for a sales tax, and that was written back many years ago. So the question would be, and the other question one might look at is sales tax, income tax. You want to get rid of one. You want to study that issue. I know that was a bill back several sessions, and it didn't make it through. But I think, generally speaking, the legislature should always be very interested in tax policy. I think a key role is to try to remove regressive elements of a tax. I think that's a major problem with only parts of the property tax, residential, especially in key counties such as Flathead, Lake, Valley, Gallatin. So to come up with some answers as to how we create a system that has less regression to it, and we should never put a person in a situation where they have to sell their property, be removed from their property because they can't afford a tax. When you can't afford a tax, by no fault of your own, you then have a regressive tax.
Timothy?
I think you raised an excellent point regarding the overburdened people and how they're taxed. However, we do have to also keep in mind that the tax policy in the state should try to create a net gain. The method of taxation has a lot to do with that, and I think that there is room for exploration regarding the sales tax to try to bring in funds from outside of the state of Montana, at the same time trying to make sure that the state of Montana is not being overburdened itself. So I think if we were to implement a sales tax, the people of Montana should have a tax relief somewhere else down the line, or some other tax method should be given credit or something along those lines, so that we are not being taxed in excess. But I do think the opportunity to tax tourists is an excellent idea, as long as we can ensure that Montanans aren't being burdened because of that tax. We do have to pay for government. Government does have a function, so let's make sure it's done the most efficient way and for the most gain as well.
Thanks. Dee asked next.
I think I'm the only one at the table tonight who actually collects the accommodation tax. My husband and I own an RV park, and we collect 7% on every visitor coming and staying with us, as do all the hotels and motels. Those millions of dollars are targeted marketing. They do quite a good job of bringing more and more people into the state of Montana. I think that when they do come, I know when they come, especially the Canadians, when they come down here, they like having no sales tax. They load up with goods. The RVers, they buy new tires. I mean, it puts people to work here. I think the 7% that we collect is the best 7% to tell the world about Montana. Even though I collect it, I don't know that I get the majority share of it. But I'm saying that we, as a group of people in Montana, really benefit by what I already consider a tourist tax, no sales tax.
Okay, I'm going to let Ed go next, and then Steve Lavin requested time as well, and then we'll see if anybody else wants to.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was distracted. First of all, the reason why we'll go back to the question that I raised the topic of a sales tax was because constituents asked me to consider it. And most importantly, as I said, it depends on how that is structured. So, if we have a $2.8 billion non-resident tourist industry in this state, there is a ton of opportunity there, I believe, that will not affect residents. So, for example, let's say we taxed t-shirts or, did something in bars or something like that, where, the regular low income or moderate income folks were not affected. I'm not saying that's the structure, but that's an example of what we could do. So the other thing that a sales tax could do is it could take some pressure off our resource management so that we're not inclined to push too hard on oil and coal and timber beyond their capacity. So I think it's a possibility to consider.
Steve Lavin.
Thank you. I'm not a proponent of any new tax. I think that we have the resources here. I mentioned a little bit of it in my opening statement. There's no need to shift the tax to any local people. It's an easy fix. We develop our resources. We utilize that money for permanent property tax relief for people. Instead of these one-time only deals that are a gimmick, let's get it done permanently. This is an easy fix.
Sean requested time, and then Jerry O'Neill.
I agree with Steve. However, I'd like to talk about property tax. As you all well know, we have a tremendous amount of foreclosures in the Flathead Valley, about 5,000 foreclosures. And I think we should re-examine a possible cap on property taxes. Back in the 90s, it worked very well. It spurred growth and productivity in the construction industry, and people were able to maintain their homes and keep up with the property tax as long as they knew that what they were paying this year was going to be the same that they were going to pay next year. Thank you.
Jerry.
I think the sales tax issue is an example of how government is untrustworthy and greedy. The accommodation business passed a sales tax upon themselves, or the accommodation tax, the bed tax, and that was I I thought that was a good deal. Here's this group of people that pass this tax and they're going to use it for their purposes. Well, the first thing that happens is the government comes in, the state, and wants to take some of that and put it in the general fund rather than giving it into build up the tourist business. And if you're going to put a sales tax, the next thing that's going to happen is that they're going to increase the property tax and the sales tax and the income tax. If you could cast it in stone, you might be able to get away with it, but I don't know how you cast it in stone. Every time the government meets, you better watch out.
Anyone else like to address taxation? Randy?
I think Jerry's got it right on target. The government is not somebody that you want to give an opportunity to raise another tax. We have, what we look at is a limited number of taxes, but when you add to that the hundreds and hundreds of fees that you pay, that I pay, those are all taxes. And that happens because government gets an opportunity to grab hold of something small. And once they grab hold of it, you're never going to get it back. But it could get bigger. And so I would say that the sales tax, the concept is great, but the reality is trusting any government to add one more tax and reduce a tax somewhere else, I wouldn't recommend it. And I know that I'm part of the government here, but I just wouldn't stand up and tell you that that's the way it's going to happen. And I would also tell you that law is only good for 2 years, because the next legislative session, things can change. And so once you've got that wedge in there, look out. Also tell you that with the fees, we need to begin to, I don't think the time has come yet, but I think that we need to begin to work towards a flat tax, where you pay for the services you receive, and I pay for the same services. But the guy that has worked really hard and has been successful in a business doesn't wind up paying for more people than himself. And again, I don't think the time has come for a flat tax, but I think it's someday in the future we need to be looking at that. Thank you.
Thanks, Diane.
Well, I already talked about this a little, and that's why I called it a tourist tax and not a sales tax. It isn't that you're increasing the taxes, you're just broadening the base of who's paying the taxes. And as Ed said, $2.8 billion spent in the state is a lot of money that we could tax, and the people want to pay it. I worked at least they're willing to pay it. I worked one summer up at the little camera shop outside of West Glacier, and some people came in to buy, I don't know, batteries or film or something that cost under $20. And they ended up buying a spotting scope and a tripod and I forget what all else, but it ended up to be like over a $300 bill. And as they're paying for it, they said, "What's the tax?" And I said, "There isn't any." And they were stunned. And I stood behind somebody in I don't even know what kind of store I was in the other day. It was a man and he wanted to pay a tax. And they said, "There isn't any in this state." And they go, "Really?" They are used to it and they would pay it. And there's no reason when they're using our roads and all of our services, there's no reason not to shift some of the burden to them. And you can give all of the people that file state income tax, you can give them a deduction for what they paid on the tourist tax. They can take that off of when they pay their income tax. So they're not paying more. You're just having more people pay.
Okay, done? Oh, one more. Brittany?
I just would like to add, I think we all agree that we need to keep taxes as low as possible, and I think we all definitely agree. And I just would like to add that tax incentives are, I think, a very interesting and creative way to encourage the things that we'd like to see toward healthy communities. I think giving a tax credit to businesses, for instance, when they are family friendly, And when they create a healthy work environment for their employees and giving that incentive to them is a good idea.
Thanks. Quickly.
Very quickly, I would like to add to Brittany's comment, I agree with part of it in that 18-month holiday for oil and gas to get people in to explore and get some of our extractive industries going in this state is a good thing. It is an incentive to people with money to come and create jobs.
Thank you. We've reached about 8:30. I'm going to try to get everybody out of here by 9, so if you have to leave before that, of course you're free, but we don't want to overburden you either. So I'm going to ask a couple more questions, and usually it takes about 10 or 15 minutes, so we'll see where we're at. I have no yes or no questions, but you're welcome to answer yes or no. On a topic that's come up a couple of times tonight, the state's reported budget surplus of $457 million, give or take a few million. Would you, each of you can answer this however you wish, but a couple of things to think about. Do you give credit to Governor Schweitzer for that surplus? Is it the previous legislature's work that is responsible for it, or several legislatures really, since it's been there for a few years now? Or is it simply an accounting trick that one of you will explain to us? And if it is a real surplus, how do you want to handle that surplus going forward? And I'll ask for volunteers to start. Okay, Randy?
Let's talk about the surplus. It's not the state surplus, it's your surplus. It's your money. It was the money that you wrote a check out to the state for. It's not time for the state to figure out how to spend that extra money. It's time for you to figure out how to spend that extra money because it belongs to you. Does Governor Schweitzer get any credit for it? I think I probably just answered that. That's yours. We cut 5% out of the budget. We would have cut out more, except the governor vetoed a total of 78 or 79 bills, and otherwise your taxes would have gone down more.
Randy, let's also, just for the heck of it, let's ask what is an appropriate surplus for the state to have on hand? Is there any at the end of the biennium?
That's the $64 question. I don't know that we've got that pinned down yet. We know that we have, every summer, we have millions of dollars difference in the number of fire costs that we have. And we can't forget that. That's not a surplus cost, that's a reality cost. We have to be able to cover that. At the end of the day, at my house, if I've got money in my pocket, I'm figuring out a way to take good care of that. And I would expect the state to do that also. Is there a number as $100 million? I don't believe it's $400 million. I'll guarantee you that. We've spent about, I heard about $44 million so far in recording costs on fires this year. So if you think about that, we've had fire years that were worse, 2003, 2005, we're bigger, maybe $100 million. But there's going to be a whole lot of people putting a pencil to that number.
Okay, thank you. And Jerry O'Neill requested time.
Thank you, Frank. As far as, first off, there is not a surplus. If you have $20 in your cookie jar in your piggy bank, and you also owe a tax bill of $300, yes, you might have a surplus in your piggy bank, but you don't have a surplus. Right now, we have like a $3 billion unfunded liability for retirement funds, for the teachers' retirement and the public employees' retirement. And somehow we have to put a tourniquet on that, stop the bleeding, then we're going to have to take some of that so-called surplus and put it towards that, and plus other money before we get done with it probably. And so I think we better pay our bills before we start talking about having money that is a surplus. As far as who gets credit for it, it was interesting. I sat on a taxation committee with Mark Blaisdell. He chaired it. And the governor had Dan Bucks come in quite regularly and say, hey, we're going to have more money to spend, you could spend more money. And then when you went up by the governor's office on the hallway by there, they had graphs saying, hey, we're going to have a lot more money, so let's spend more money. Basically, they're trying to get us to fund a lot more things. And we, in the taxation committee and the other Republicans, and I think there was a Democrat or two that did, anyhow, we refused to spend more than what we tried to keep it just as frugal as we could, because we know that we need to have enough money to go around, and we know how easy it is to get in the hole.
Thanks, Jerry. Sean, did you want to talk? I saw your hand here.
I agree with Jerry about there really isn't any surplus. It's also, if there is some money there, it does belong to all of Montana. We're one of the few states that is in the black. Most of the rest of the states are in the red because of collective bargaining and other programs that are just bankrupting them. Also, misappropriations. I remember several years ago, the Martz administration basically went under because of misappropriation, and the legislature had to go in and go back 3 years to balance the budget. That was the beginning of the turnaround to present to you today a possible surplus in our coffers down there. It really had nothing to do with Mr. Schweitzer, except for the fact that he did have to watch his P's and Q's a little bit closer.
Okay, I'm going to let Ed go, and then both of the candidates in Senate District 2 want to talk.
I also would agree with Jerry and his assessment. There's some money. We have a decision point, really, is what the situation is. We've got obligations, and the teacher's retirement and the public employees' retirement system are obligations that have to be met. And so that money should go to make that system sound. We have obligations to schools as well. We have an opportunity, and I think an obligation as well, for some property tax relief. And we have to leave money for that eventual fire. Whether it's a rainy day, and I think that's an appropriate metaphor for what we would use that for, is to pay off the fire bill. I would hope that we could invest some of it. We have opportunities to invest in infrastructure, and that could yield some benefits. That could yield some revenue for us if we do it properly in terms of jobs, and then that could generate taxes. So there's a mix of opportunities here and obligations.
Do you request the time first?
I want to have the problem of the surplus that North Dakota has, $1 billion in the bank. That's the one I want to have. I want to have that discussion when we have enough tax money to pay all of our bills, give the property tax relief that Montanans are so craving, and do more extraction and tie it to everything else. I think our time is now and coming.
I guess I'd piggyback a bit with what Ed said. No matter what we call it, we do have a surplus, and along with that, I think our number one issue facing legislators is to fix the PERS system and TRS system. We can't leave it for a future generation. We have obligations. Having said that, those are sort of independent entities. So I don't know who's responsible for the surplus. Maybe it's just luck. We took in more money than we expected. That's a good thing. Maybe there's more energy development. That's helped. Better collections, whatever. But I would look at some potential property tax relief or canceling phase-in. I would look at consideration of a failed $100 million bond last year at a state level that could be paid for without a bond. More or less shovel-ready projects throughout the state, jobs is an issue, gets people to work. I would agree that the fire fund needs attention, and I would also be willing to put a little bit towards the basic entitlement for A and B year students within the public school system.
Any other responses? Okay.
I'm just curious, because I hear a lot of people saying that they want property tax relief for, I'm presuming, homeowners and small businesses. But I read an article that quoted Bruce Tutbeck saying that he wants to give the property tax relief to big businesses, which is going to shift it on to small businesses. So would, did I misread the article, or is that the plan?
Bruce is not here tonight. He will be here next week. I'll try to ask him. Is that it for this round then? Okay. Okay. Zach.
I just wanted to say that the last time I ran 2 years ago, we were in the black, and we were one of very few states in the country that was dealing with that scenario. And the budget, there is a surplus. I know we have unfunded pension liabilities, but we are in the black, and I think that's something to be proud of. I'd rather be in the black than in the red.
Thanks. Okay. This is a kind of a general question for each of you that might reveal something that we don't know. Sometimes the legislators get to Helena and all of a sudden we discover that they have priorities that we didn't know about, maybe things that are close to their heart, and they pursue those even though they wouldn't be necessarily good campaign issues, so we don't necessarily hear about them in advance. But I just want to ask each of you, what one issue do you expect to make your #1 priority if you're elected? And if you've already spoken about it extensively in the forum, you can just mention it again. We don't need to go into detail if you've already discussed it, but I'm curious if each of you might address kind of the burning passion that maybe will drive you on one issue. And I'm just going to ask to go down the line on this one and get something from everybody.
Okay, this will be the first time I announce this. I'm really concerned and a supporter of personal privacy in many cases. So now there's going to be licensing of drones for commercial use. And I thought it would be interesting to investigate this issue at a state level to see if it would be appropriate to looking at a licensing procedure, just to make sure those drones aren't watching over citizens without their knowledge. So it's something I read about within the last 3 or 4 months. It's not, and no one at the door has ever told me you need to do a drone law, but I'm going to maybe pay a little bit of attention to it and see if there's a need to do so.
I think that's valid, Dave. I've not been a big purporter of having a lot of bills with my name on them. I have carried very few bills. I believe that the work of the legislators really is in committee. It's when you can tweak a bill in that committee and make it a better bill for all of Montana. That is one of my strong points. I will say, however, that if elected, I did promise one group that I would put in a bill for the home canners of the world in this state so that we could have a canning exchange without the food police to tell us that we couldn't exchange our canned goods, because that's exactly what happened in Whitefish last spring. It was all announced. We threw our pickles and our cherries in and went up to the brewery to do the exchange, and lo and behold, the county came in and said, oh no, you can't do that. Now, I think that's just absolutely ridiculous. And I think we need to step back somewhat and have some personal responsibility And so I'm for home canning and the people who do it.
Thanks, Steve. We are finding out some things that are interesting. Back.
I guess an issue that I'm very passionate about, that I might not bring up on the doors, is mental health in the state of Montana, especially for veterans. We have a lot of people that suffer unnecessarily with mental health issues, and I would like to make sure that there are resources available and more education so that that unnecessary suffering is addressed. So, mental health.
Now, this isn't the biggest issue I'm going to be pushing. Probably the biggest issue is probably the justice for the citizens. But it just galls me when I go out to the green box site at Columbia Falls. There's a piece of metal sitting there that I can use to hang my shovels on or to do something else with. And somebody threw it away. I want to be able to pick it up and throw it in my pickup. Well, the dump, we don't call it dump, we call it the refuse board, says no salvaging from the green box sites. Well, I went to the county commissioner debates earlier when they were for the primary, and all the county commissioner candidates, at least all the ones that have made it through the primaries, have told me, hey, if it wasn't for the liability issue, we would allow salvaging from the green box site. So I will probably carry a bill to say, hey, if you jump into that box and you jump on a hypodermic needle to your own darn fault, you're going to be responsible for yourself, in order that people can reach out and grab a piece of metal, or they can take one of those lawnmowers there with no engine and use it to put their anvil on or their pump on or something. Or there's lots of things there that can be used for good purpose, and I hate to see it being thrown away and getting a dime a pound of the Pacific hide and fur when you can use it for your own purposes.
Thanks, Jim.
I appreciate this question, Frank. The thing that I'm most adamant about is poorly drafted legislation that costs we the people our liberty and our inalienable rights. The state fund in Montana is a pay-to-play system. The legislation would have you believe that the worker is to blame for their injuries. That is not always the case. In fact, rarely is it the case considering outfits like W.R. Grace. Why is it the victim always get the short end of every deal? The victim loses benefits to reduce the expense of the workers' comp insurance. How about releasing the employee from the bondage created by the following statutory provision and demanding safer work environments that hold employers responsible? This provision is called 39-71-411, provision of exclusive remedy for non-liability. An employer is not subject to any liability whatever for the death or personal injury to an employee covered by the Workers' Compensation Act of Montana for any claims or contributory addendum, whatever. It's just ridiculous. The way this provision reads is as follows. Exclusive remedy, no other relief for the claim. State fund decides what is fair, not what's happened to the claimant. Employment covered means that those choose to play are covered. Those businesses that can pay the state fund get no liability for anything that they do to their employees. If you do not pay the state fund, you are not protected from liability. The employer is not subject to any liability whatever for the death or personal injury. No injured employee or their family or their representative can recover damages. This provision effectively makes every employee an indentured servant in this state to the company that they work for, as long as the company pays into the state fund. Employees are bound. You have become a slave to the state fund and to your employer. And that goes for everyone that is not union in the state, and to those individuals that have to work for companies that are not, shall we say, got their best interests at heart to operate their company in a safe environment. Thank you.
This summer, Whitefish Lake dodged a bullet. There were barges that came to City Beach with zebra mussels on them. If zebra mussels get established in a lake, they are virtually impossible to get rid of. So we need, right now Fish, Wildlife and Parks has the authority to inspect, but we don't have adequate inspection in the state. The state of Idaho has it, but Montana doesn't. So I think that would be something that we need, aquatic invasive species inspection.
It's actually kind of a difficult question for me because I really have, as I've gone through this campaign process, I've tried to really keep my mind open to what House District 4 wants, and so I don't want to really preconceive much of anything as far as what the will of the people is in that district. However, my experiences as an attorney and the kind of cases that I handle has given me a certain kind of sensitivity to the rights of individuals. And I am pretty, I guess you'd say, passionate about ensuring that individual rights are protected from government encroachment, whether that be in the criminal realm or in the civil realm as well. And so I would like to approach this 2013 session with that in mind, to ensure that individuals are not unfairly treated by whatever government entity it might be involved, and to ensure that the due process procedures are in place to protect individuals so that it's not overly easy for the government to oppress people. And quite frankly, I'm not sure if you all realize it or not, I'm sure you do to some degree, but when the government is filing suit against you for whatever reason, it's very difficult to defend yourself because you don't have near the resources and energy and personnel to defend yourself as the government does. And so it's very important, I think, that we make sure that the due process requirements are there and in place as our Constitution provides, so that individual rights are protected and so that our freedom is protected. All of our freedom will be protected because of that. So that's a personal priority, I guess you might say, if you want to say personal priority. It's very important that we keep that in mind when we go to the 2013 session.
It was a toss-up. I would like to see a very strong local economy, and I read that that starts with a local food source. So that was the first thing I was leaning on mentioning. But there's been a lot of moves lately to try to privatize everything, and I think that there are problems with that. And I would like to make sure that our schools stay public and we have public libraries and a sense of community. And I support individual rights, but I equally support public rights and public good. And I would like to make sure that we don't tip too far to privatization.
My focus is on reducing an intrusive and burdensome government. I'll give you a couple examples of that. We have a first grade grandson who sometimes takes his lunch to school. When he gets to school, before he can have his lunch has to be inspected that he brought from home. And if the food that he brought to school is not on the approved list, it is taken away. What are we doing? That is absolutely an intrusive government, and that's under our current leadership in Office of Public Instruction, and I don't support that. And The other little bit of a burdensome government is when we look at how businesses are licensed. My wife and I have a partnership. We own a cabinet shop here in the district. And when we pay for our license, we write 3 different checks out. 1 for our license, 2 for our independent contractor exemption. I pay 1. 2 weeks later, my wife gets a bill and pays 1. All of that, all 3 of those are processed separately, which makes absolutely no sense. The checks are made out to labor and industry. We could write 1 check. They could send us 1 bill. And that's the kind of stuff that we need to streamline so that we reduce the cost of government, we reduce the intrusiveness, and we take away the ability of government to create more government.
In terms of a bill, I do feel like many people here that my job is to represent the people in my district. So I'm listening to what people in my district are talking about and what their needs are. So that will be my top priority, and also working together, definitely working collaboratively in committee. There is an issue that I am thinking about and watching and listening to it evolve, though, and I don't at this point see it shaping into a bill or into a law, but I've been really reading and following people who are talking about economic change at a very interesting level, and they're looking at the economy in terms of a new economy and what a new economy could look like, and new economic structures that we might very well be getting to the point where we can index our economy in a different way. And so that's something I'm tracking and following, and I see really exciting opportunities there. But in terms of a bill, I don't know what that would look like yet.
Thank you. Just briefly, I'd like to give kudos to Senator Verdell Jackson, who actually protected Montana's waterways with significant legislation protecting it from aquatic invasive species, and I really appreciate that as a user of our waterways. As far as my personal ideas, as everybody knows, I said before, I'm a highway patrolman. I feel strongly about public safety, and I'll still work on some of those ideas. And I'll continue to try to make our state safer from drunk drivers and the problems that come through that. But my focus, number 1 focus, and I've said it probably 3 or 4 times here, jobs and economy, because that's what I'm hearing on the doors. Let's keep it simple. You know, we have some of the biggest quantities and highest qualities of coal in the world. Let's get this thing moving. Let's put people to work. Let's bring in some money for our state and utilize it properly. That'll be my number 1 focus, is jobs in the economy. And I want to keep it streamlined and focused on that during this legislature. There's no need to get off on too many issues. Let's keep it going and do it for the people of Montana.
Thanks, Steve. Well, I'm going to let that stand in lieu of a closing statement by the candidates, since it is getting to 9 o'clock. I think everybody has admirably defended their positions, in some cases advanced the dialogue quite a bit. I learned a lot, and I applaud all the candidates for being well prepared tonight, and want to join you in a round of applause for them tonight. I just want to basically remind you that we will be having another forum with other legislators and legislative candidates next week at this time. And we hope to, on October 23rd, have a forum with the county commissioner candidates. We welcome you to those. October 14th, we have the Senate debate, and tickets have been distributed to that through a random drawing. Hopefully some of you will be attending that. There are also, you should all obviously be paying close attention to tomorrow's presidential debate, which we all need to focus on. That debate will also start at 7 o'clock. So I want to thank you all for coming tonight, and I hope you've all, there must be at least 3 undecided voters out there, right? So hopefully those 3 people learned something tonight, and I know the rest of you enjoyed it, I hope. So we'll see you next week, maybe. Thanks.